Hi, my name is Kelsey Eskew and I am an art educator in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm going into my 5th year this year teaching. And when I'm planning to go into my school year, I always want to make sure that the supplies that I'm using are safe and appropriately used for everybody involved. So that's why I'm so excited that I have paired up with the Art and Creative Materials Institute, also known as ACMI, to bring you more education about what you're using and what to look for with these supplies. ACMI is an international association with about 200 art manufacturers, which seeks to promote safety for art products and those creative processes. You want to make sure you're looking for either an AP label or a CL label. Now, what's the difference between the two? An AP seal is safe to use when it's used as intended for any artist out there. Now, the CL label is going to be for artists that are 12 and up, and again, make sure you're using it as you're supposed to. These are the labels that parents should trust. Any artist should be looking for these labels when you're thinking about what supplies to be buying. Not only are the AP and CL labels the seal of approval for parents, but they're also approved by toxicologists. So ACMI is really looking out for you to make sure that you know what you're getting and you know how to properly use these supplies. Now today I want to take you through a project that's going to use both AP and CL labeled products in a middle school, high school, and on up project that anyone above the age of 12 can enjoy with those CL products in there as well. So come on with me and we're going to make something that has watercolor, it has pens, it has the best of everything. It's a little therapeutic with Zentangles, and we're gonna make animals. We're gonna use animals with Zentangles. We're gonna make a beautiful watercolor background for this, and I can't wait to get started with you. Getting started with this watercolor and Zentangle project, we need some supplies. You are going to want to make sure you have paintbrushes, your watercolor paper or mixed media paper, maybe some sponges, tape, a cup of water, watercolor, paint obviously, and go ahead and get started. You can paint just going right onto that dry paper. Maybe you want to wet it down first and go wet into wet for your technique approach. There are all different ways you can approach your painting with watercolors. You could always use some tape and tape some areas down, maybe do some lines or put them all over your paper if you want to. You're going to see me using all sorts of different techniques for mine. The goal of your background is to make sure it is non-representational. You don't want it to look like anything specific at all. That's all that means, is it doesn't look like anything. You could make different colors light to dark with transparency. Experiment with lines. Keep going across that whole entire paper. I'm using a little bit of a sponge to give it some texture. Use it all over. Layer your colors. When you layer your watercolors, you give it a whole new approach and a different look than if you just lay it down once. Keep working across that whole entire paper, and this is one of those where you just gotta trust the process. You might not like it while you're working on it, but the more you keep working into it, you're layering with it. Maybe you're dry brushing where you have like no water on your paint at all with that brush, and you just keep working into it, giving it layers, experimenting with how you are creating this non-representational background for your watercolor and Zentangle animal. When you're feeling in a good place with your watercolor background, put it to the side, let it dry, and we're gonna switch gears on over to our pens, our markers, and we want to experiment with possible line techniques. First up with these possible line techniques is hatching. That's just going to be straight lines going across in our shape. We've got cross hatching, which is our straight lines, and then we put a little bit of cross action going on in there. It kind of looks like shading. Contour lines are just going to curve a little bit more. Cross contour is just the same thing as contour, but again, it's going to give us a little bit more of that shading approach. Contrasting lines go one way and then they go another way. We have stippling. That's going to be just so many dots. The more you put in an area, the more it's going to look like that shading, and they can fade on out. Then we got doodles. Doodle it on up in those different lines. Don't forget about Zentangles as a possibility for your animal. We want these to be relaxing patterns. So I'm just gonna go through and show you a bunch of different possible patterns. Are these the only patterns you can use? Absolutely not. You're the artist here, have fun with it, but these are just a few ideas for what you could do with your animal. Getting started onto your animal, you want to first sketch it out with a pencil for that silhouette, and then you can get started onto the inside with maybe Zentangles or all those other possible line techniques. You can go right for it with some of those markers and pens, or you can test it out first with the pencil and then go over it. I'm being bold and brave, just going straight on in with my pens. The goal with your animal is to make it abstract. So abstract means that we want to base it on something that's real, but you're probably not going to see a realistic Zentangle cat in the wild. You're going to see, a normal cat. But for this, we want to make it abstract. So it still looks like a cat, but we're changing it up and focusing on those lines and those patterns, going back through, maybe making some lines thicker, some lines thinner. We want to give it emphasis, and you want to just have fun with how you're doing it. It should feel therapeutic. If you're stressing on out with a pattern, change it up. Make it how you want it to be for what you're doing. When your animal is done, you're going to want to cut it out and experiment with where you're placing it on your watercolor background. Play with it, figure out where you want to put it, and then we're going to be using rubber cement. Now, rubber cement is a CL labeled product, so that means you need to make sure you're 12 and up and using it as appropriate, just like any other supplies. We want to be safe than sorry in the end. So take your time when you're using that rubber cement and always make sure you're using it as you're supposed to. Place it on down. It's just like glue, but it's gonna stick a lot harder than that glue would. It kind of is a little gooey and gluey, so make sure you're being careful with that and place it on down. And just like that, you have finished creating your watercolor and Zentangle animal. I hope you had fun creating this along with me, and remember, when you are looking to buy your art supplies, always be looking for those AP and CL labels for that seal of approval to make sure they're safe to use and you're using them appropriately. Thank you for watching and keep creating.